Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we introduce and review all of the costs relevant to grading Pokemon cards and how you can use the spreadsheet that you see on screen right now to budget for your card submissions. Now, the idea for this came from a completely different video, but it's something that I've been thinking about doing for a very long time. For any longtime viewers of the channel, you know that I had a pretty large 302 card PSA submission come back, and basically throughout the remainder of 2020 as well as early into 2021, I did have quite a bit of time to do PSA graded returns on the channel. Come to find out, I was able to take all of that data, aggregate it up, and basically develop a system for budgeting the costs as well as tracking the revenue that was coming in from the sales of those cards. As a result of that, I basically ended up with a really cool spreadsheet, and so I figured what I would do today is A, show off that spreadsheet, B, show you all of the different costs that I budget for and give consideration to when tracking how profitable one of my various Pokemon card investment is, and more importantly, make the spreadsheet available to you all through Google Drive so that you all can use the spreadsheet whenever you engage in projects like this. Now, it should go without saying, but obviously I am not a financial expert, nor do I decide to be your financial expert. And what that basically means is that although this stuff is accurate in terms of calculating basis for taxes and, potentially helps you to keep track of reportable taxable income, I'm not a financial expert. And if you have any questions related to your taxes or sensitive financial information, I strongly encourage you to ask those questions to your personal tax expert or accountant. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started and take a look at the spreadsheet. More importantly, let's finally get to take a look at the costs that are relevant to PSA grading. So, as you can see on screen right now, I've made a pretty nifty list of different costs, and we'll just go through them each one by one. So first up is going to be the purchase of cards. So it's really simple. It's how many you paid for each and every card. But there are some additional things to take into consideration here. For example, if you bought the cards for $2,000 and then you paid to have them overnighted for $200, reasonably, you can expect to say that those cards are worth $2,200 to you. And that's an important distinction. A lot of people don't realize this, but you should be considering costs of shipping to you whenever you have to purchase cards in bulk. That's an important distinction because the key trick to properly evaluating the profitability of any project you may take on when it comes to Pokemon is realizing that there are tons of other relevant costs, and this is a prime example, right? You think you just paid $2,000 for the cards, but the real trick is understanding that the shipping, the insurance, and any other fees that you may have paid in relation to the purchase of that would factor into the number you would put into B2 for the purchase of cards. So I strongly urge you all to definitely keep better track of that. It's really easy sometimes to forget about things like shipping or, oh, hey man, throw me $50 on the side for goods and services fees. And while that kind of stuff is up to you in terms of how you choose to go about it, don't forget on the back end, whenever you're tracking things like profitability, to really take the time and go ahead and include that into the cost of your cards. Next up is going to be shipping to PSA. Now, I say PSA, but obviously this applies to any and all of the different grading services. So it could be CGC, BGS, PSA. I just put PSA there because obviously I use PSA. For this, it's going to be really simple. This behaves pretty much like a fixed fee, just depending on how you choose to ship the package. So for most scenarios, I can't see it being over $40 unless you choose to overnight it. Most people would agree that a medium-sized priority mail flat rate box is the ideal way to ship cards to PSA. You can fit them in the card savers facing upwards if you're here in the United States, and it's a relatively simple, easy, and straightforward way of shipping. Obviously, if you needed to because you were shipping that many cards, you could also go ahead and include a large rate box there. So shipping to PSA, assuming you're shipping flat rate, will be one easy to remember fee. Otherwise, if you are going to ship using a variable rate service, you might find that the price goes up or down. Again, this is one of those costs that you're really in control of. So you could go ahead and ship overnight with a private delivery service and pay $200. Or you could just wait until things calm down a little bit, pay $16 using Pirate Ship or another one of those discount shipping services, and get your cards there safe in 2 days, easy peasy, no problems asked. So it's entirely up to you, but if you're looking to maximize the amount of money you make when it comes to grading cards and selling them, this is definitely one of the things to consider, is how you go about shipping and how much that can dig into your bottom line. Next up is going to be supplies, and for the supplies I actually have a separate calculator down below. So I'm just going to very quickly zoom in over here and show you the supplies calculator. So for the supplies calculator, I obviously have some major straightforward things that I have found are relevant to every single submission, and then there are some things that, you know, can vary depending on the day. So first thing up is obviously going to be card savers. Card savers are an interesting one because at the time I'm making this video, card savers are crazy expensive because the supply has been greatly reduced because of the effects of COVID-19. So right now a box of 200 card savers I think can go for upwards of $60. Mind you, normal price for 200 card savers is $20. So this is another one of those things that if you can lower the price by buying pre-used, or if you can find some lightly used ones and, you know, kind of recycle through them, it can help you cut some costs, and more importantly, it can definitely help you in the long run. Once this stuff begins to come back in regular supply, prices will obviously drop. It's not like these things are rare antiquities. These are just card savers that no one's making right now because they're low on the ring of things that COVID-19 is causing high demand for. So obviously card savers are very important to the grading process, but something interesting to consider, PSA has also said they will accept top loaders because they recognize how difficult it is to get card savers. So again, something to think about. Sleeves, refer to penny sleeves. You can go ahead and include the cost of sleeves. They literally do cost a penny, so technically you should be paying about $1 per 100. Sometimes you'll pay a little bit more, a little bit less. Obviously, I'm putting some ideal prices here, but they don't have to necessarily reflect the current market. Tape and bubble wrap. Again, you can get bubble wrap from Amazon packages. You could buy a newspaper for 50 cents and use that to pack your items. Tape is one of those things you can't necessarily always get around. Sometimes I just like to go to Target and buy a roll of tape, and that's the one roll of tape that I'm going to use to wrap my box really, really well to make sure that A, the label can't get damaged or scuffed, and B, because I'm shipping what is effectively just a large brick full of trading cards, that it doesn't like fall apart and break apart into a million pieces during transit. Tape is one of those things, dare I say, where you can probably never put too much of it. As long as you're using a transparent tape that won't obscure the shipping label, it's probably a really good idea to tape whatever box you're shipping your cards in really, really, really well. And bubble wrap, I would, argue the validity of maybe something like bubble wrap, but what I will say is that it does help to really chock your box full of shipping material to really help ensure that your cards aren't moving around during transit. So definitely an important part of the process and something people often overlook. A shipping box, again, really just depends on the situation you're in. Many people find that you can use an Amazon box. If you're here in the United States, a priority mail box is free at the post office. All you have to do is go pick one up off the shelf or ask for it. And then finally but not least, I have this miscellaneous section. Oftentimes I will go ahead and include things like the cost of a marker or the cost of those little book tabs that you can use to put onto the back of the sleeve of the card before it is inserted into the card saver. If you wanted to include any of those types of supplies, this would be the area that you could include them in. And of course, if there are additional ones that you guys think I'm missing, feel free to let me know that down below in the comments, and I can go in and edit and add those in. Now, you're going to insert all of your prices over here, and then it will automatically calculate the cost of your supplies up here. So that's pretty cool. You can pretty much get a really good idea of how much your, just general supplies cost. Next up is grading. This is obviously going to be related to the cost of grading with whichever service you chose to go with. This can vary, right? So this can be per unit driven, meaning if you grade 5 cards at $100, it'll be $500. If you grade one card at $10,000, it'll be $10,000. You get the idea here. You could take this information directly off of the website for the grading service that you're using. Same thing with the return shipping. Very frequently, they will charge you return shipping based on the value of the cards that you have declared in the package. And so if you have one card worth $1 million, you might find that it's a $5,000 shipping fee because it's fully insured overnight delivery. And then there may be other situations where it's a bulk submission, it's 100 cards worth $10 each. So they ship back to you for 60 bucks. Again, they will calculate it on their end. You just go ahead and click it in here. From there, this total cost field is automatically calculated, and it goes ahead and just takes all of these different costs, puts them together, and that's your total amount of costs as it relates to the purchase and making ready for sale or collection or whatever of your Pokemon cards. So the cool thing here is that these particular boxes give you the total costs associated. Next up, I do have two little other areas with an important distinction. So you have cards for sale or trade, and then you have personal cards. What I mean for cards for sale or trade is, these are the cards that in your submission that you are either intending on holding for investment purposes, selling in the open market, trading to get stuff that you want. Basically, you're not going to hold these cards for your own personal reasons. And the idea is that you're doing this either with the intention of making a profit or obtaining something that you do actually want. So I like to differentiate between the two because very frequently I will include cards in a variety of different submissions, some of which are for sale and some of which are not. And that's okay. It's important to differentiate between the two because it can help you get a better and more accurate profit figure a little bit later on in this process. Ditto the next field, which is the personal card section. So you're going to do the opposite, right? You're going to say how many are for sale, how many are not for sale, and that gives you your total number of cards. Then what I went ahead and did is I basically divided the total costs by the total number of cards. And as you can, kind of tell, it's a relatively simple process. There's nothing here that's really brain science. But what's important to note is that this gives you two very interesting figures. So the first is the cost per card inclusive of your personal cards. So basically this is 351.94 divided by 12. And the reason we do that is because, the two cards that I theoretically have in this submission here, right? They're for personal use. They're going in my collection. I intend on, keeping them as collectibles. And I really don't want to exclude them purposefully with the intention of making it seem as though everything is a lot cheaper than it is, right? So inclusive technically lowers the cost per card, but the total number of costs stays the same, right? It's going to cost me the same amount anyway, but inclusive of my personal cards, it just basically helps spread the cost out over more cards. Bear in mind, at the end of the day, if I'm not planning to do anything with these two cards, this amount times 2 is what I technically get stuck with, right? So that's what I eat as a collector because I'm willing to, basically buy the cards for this much graded. Obviously, the exact opposite is true of exclusive. So if we're doing something exclusive, we're saying it's just the cards that are available for sale or trade. This is what I was mentioning earlier about profitability. Sometimes you'll want to look at this number just to get an idea of what's really going on with your particular submission and endeavor, right? Let's be real here. grading cards and then turning them around to the market, it's an essential service that many people have engaged in over the past year. I'm not necessarily going to try to have the philosophical argument of whether it's good or bad, but I do think that for a lot of people it's created a really great side hustle. It's definitely helped a lot of people become more exposed in the hobby, and more importantly, it certainly does a very important job, and that is creating new supply of graded cards that people can buy, sell, and trade. And so that's all I'll really have to say about the idea of card grading being a profit-driven type of endeavor. But when you are thinking about it like that, it's important to think about the exclusive nature. If you have 10 cards in the submission that you purposefully want to sell, technically all of these costs really belong to that, to those 10 cards. And you could make the argument that that's not a fair allocation of costs, because I'm basically ignoring these 2 cards. So I'm basically saying these 2 cards get a free ride. They get graded for free, they get shipped to free, they get free card savers and sleeves and free return shipping, and basically I'm not even paying for these cards. But what I have found, and this is just me personally now, what I have found is that that is an excellent way of making sure that you're always covering for your own expenses. Put a different way, if you use this number, the cost per card exclusive of any personal cards, it's really an excellent way of making sure that, if you decide to keep a few of these cards, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, because built into the cost that you see here in the exclusive figure is the fact that your 2 personal cards are free of charge to you. You never paid for them, you never paid to grade them, ship them, anything like that. They were covered by the other 10 cards that you ended up selling, trading, holding for investment, etc., etc. So this is a really good number for internal purposes, and the inclusive figure is a little bit more of a more accurate representation of what your investment really looks like. Cost per card inclusive profit per card inclusive obviously sounds exactly like what it is. We're going to take the total sales value, then we're going to subtract the total cost per card, and then we'll come to a number, and then the profit inclusive is just total sales minus total costs, and that gives you your profit. So effectively, you have the individual average profit, and then you have the total profit, which again, really simple stuff here. Now, those 2 numbers, the profit figures, are actually derived from this, which is the final component of my table for today. And as you can see, it's really simple. This is just another great, easy way of keeping track of some of the relevant line item figures that are important when you're selling. So in column E, you'll see that I have the sale. This is a template, so you can obviously kind of, edit this as you see fit. But what you'll have is the number of sales, and I just give them a unique number, so numbers 1 through 7. The number of cards that I sold in that transaction. So if transaction 1 was to Bob, transaction 2 was to Mary, Bob got 1 card, Mary got 2 cards. Here was the total that we agreed upon. Here are the fees that we paid, and you'll notice that in some scenarios you pay fees. So things like PayPal fees or a bank transaction fee would be deducted in the total sale, right? And it's important to do that because don't forget that $6.10 is going to come out of your pocket. So it shouldn't be included in the profit figure because it's not really reflecting the actual value that you got from the sale. So it's important to keep this stuff in mind. As you can see, sometimes it goes a little better than other times. And again, these are all just simulated figures. There are other times where, hey, we did friends and family, or hey, we did a local pickup, or hey, we just, did cash on hand. And in situations like that, the fee is 0. Shipping costs are any time that you're asked to ship something. So again, in line item number 7, it seems as though, we were able to sell this one card for a stupid amount of money, and the buyer decided to pay shipping. Sometimes that happens. Other times you don't get so lucky, and other times it doesn't fit in a priority mail box and you have to pay per pound. Since we sold 2 cards, it's a little costly. Now, the net amount in column J is basically the total minus the fees minus the shipping costs. And that makes sense, right? Those are the fees and shipping are things that we paid that are going to come out of our pocket. So we might as well take them off the total because this is the net amount we will be receiving once all of the money has cleared and assuming no issues arise on the back end. And then finally but not least, a average price per card is a good figure to have here as well. It's basically saying, here's how many cards I sold in that transaction. Here's how many monies I made along the way. And then just give me an average number. And that kind of helps you to understand a little bit about, what's selling really well, what's not selling really well. And, there may be times when you can use this type of metric to determine certain things about certain customers. So for example, if a customer is always sticking you with fees and shipping and their average is incredibly low compared to others, you may want to work specifically on that customer and, letting them know that, hey, I need to increase my overall price to help cover for the cost of fees and shipping. Then there are other times, right? If this one person gave you a really awesome sale and you're really happy about what you got, you might also want to consider the opposite, which is, turning around and saying, hey man, I'll throw you something free on the back end. So there you have it, friends. That is everything I try to consider when I grade Pokemon cards. This is, a pretty large list of different items to consider, but it's super important because I do think that each of these items that we spoke about today is a very key and critical component to not only determining your profit, but also measuring your success. One of the things I'll always say is that you really need to be mindful of how much fun you're having, because that's obviously the most important thing. But when you're seriously throwing around money and you're really trying to think about ways of turning your side hustle into a career, or really trying to make moves in the hobby that require significant amounts of capital, every dollar counts. And in situations like that, it can be really beneficial to use a spreadsheet budget like this to help you understand a little bit more about where your costs may be too high, where your revenues may be too low, where certain customers may be being a little too difficult, and where you can sort of work to optimize each of those in order to, at the end of the day, maximize this figure right here, the profit, the dollar margin, period, amen. So with that said, friends, thank you again for checking out another video. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but as I always say, you chose to spend some time with me, and that is really much appreciated. I hope you guys are having an amazing Saturday, and if you are, feel free to let me know that down below. Of course, I have a feeling a video like this one will cause a lot of questions to get asked, so I will be standing by and ready to answer those questions as they roll in. Of course, if there's anything you wanted to add in or any feedback that you had for the spreadsheet, feel free to let me know that as well. Like I said, there will be a link in the description that will bring you to a viewable version of the spreadsheet. And if anybody wants a copy of it for themselves, feel free to drop me an email at theanalyticgengar@gmail.com, and I will share to your Gmail a personal private copy that you'll be able to save as well as work on in the future. Other than that, if you aren't already, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and thank you again for checking out another video. Other than that, friends, we'll talk soon. Peace.